Welcome students to lab number 7, and in this lab we will do example number 3. In this example we will recreate a histogram from data read from a CSV file, which is something we have used to do it so far, but this time we will just recreate the histogram. Now, in this example, we will read a CSV file that contains the defense yard for American football teams in NFL, and we will see the histogram. So, as usual, the first thing we have to import pandas as PD. We also will not forget to import Matplotlib pyplot as BLT, and then we directly will read our file. I will call it in data frame, and that data frame will be just pd.read CSV, and here I will pass the file name. Now, the file name is in my directory, and it's called defense allowed. I'll explain this file in details, but let me just first read it. So defense allowed.csv, and the first step we will just print this df. Okay, just forget this one. Now we will read this file, which we call it defense allowed, and we will see what's there and how we can fix it quickly. So this is the file. The first thing you notice that the second column contains the team name. So we start with Arizona and we end with Washington, many American football teams in NFL. In the second column, we have the week number. So in week number 1, Arizona, they allowed 488 yards in the defense. Now, you can think about defense yard as how many yards they have lost during the game, how many yards the defense team has lost, how many came back, the offense of the other team gained yard on that team. For example, in Arizona, in week number 1, in the first game, they have lost 488 yards. Second week they get better, and then they get better. In the fourth week they did very well because they allowed less and less yards in the defense. Now, the first thing we notice is the columns, they have no names. So first of all, we have to do data preprocessing. So just let me go here and do data preprocessing. Now, this is something good to practice it from time to time. I need to give the columns name, okay? And that's the first thing we need to do. So the first thing, I will just go ahead and give the columns names or meaningful names. Of course, what we really care is second column, the team name, the week number, and the yard. The rest of them you just can call them 4 and 5 or column 1, column 2. So remember, column 1, I don't really look at this, I'll just call it col 1. Now, column number 2, it has the team, so I'll just call it team column. Column number 3 has the week. And finally, column number 4, it has the yard allowed, I'll just call it yards. Now, column number 5, I just call it col 5. And column number 6, which again, I don't really put attention to it, and I think we have also column 7, comma, col 7. And now let's see what this will make a difference. So I will run it again. So I'll just press play, and now column number 1, which has no data, column number 2 called team, and yes, it contains the team. Column number 3, it has the weeks. Column 4, it has the yards. Column 5, 6, and 7, which of course has no data, we will not deal with them. Of course, there is another way. I can open this file, defense allowed, and I can remove the column 5, 6, 7, and column 1, but I kept them here so that at least we can see kind of a data preprocessing in this. Now, second thing we need to do is our focus will be in this column, which is the column of the yard. I need to make sure that all those numbers, whatever they are, they should be real numbers, should be float, of type float. They looks like in type float, but just in case, let us ensure that those are of type float. So I will go to this column, which I call it yards, and all what I will do is I'll just change everything in it and make sure everything in it is from type float. So I just ASP type and I'll pass float to it. And now we will not see anything here except that we make sure if something in the middle which is not float, maybe something different, it will be read as a numbers, because sometimes you need to do a mean, you need to find maximum, minimum, so those are not string. We make sure that they are just float. Now next, what we will do is we will start doing the histogram. So we finish from the first part, and before I go and do the histogram, I'll do it in a different column. Just let me quickly repeat what we did. So in example number 3, we read a file called defense allowed. This file has the team name, week number, and the yards they allowed in that week. First thing, we give the columns a meaningful names, and specifically we focus on team, week, and yards. And then we make sure that those yards which we want to manipulate, they are of type float, so we can take the mean, we can sum, we can do all things we can do with float, and then we print that data frame. Next step, we will create our histogram. Create histogram. So, what is the simplest of all histogram is just go by plot.hist. Now, of course, in Hist we have to pass many parameters here. Now, the simplest one is what is the data I want to plot as histogram. Remember, I'm focusing on the yard. So how to access the yard? I will go to my data frame and I will just go ahead and reach the column yards. This is the simplest one without any parameters, without colors, without labels, without anything. Let's see if I just try to show this plot, how it looks like, and then we will enhance it. Now, if you look at this one, this is the histogram we get. It's a nice, beautiful histogram. The default color is blue. Now I can start enhancing this one. Why should I just stick with this? I can enhance it with many things. The first thing, let's enhance it with. So I'll just copy this one and keep it for you so that when you practice, you can find it. The first thing we can do here is to give it a color. Maybe I want to change the color. Let's change it to red. Usually red will give you a meaningful that is the yards allowed or the yard you have lost. So it's red means something more colorful. In histograms we have the bin. Let's try with bin equal 20. I'll run this code and let's see how things will change. So when we add bins equal 20, we don't really feel any much of a difference here. Of course, because this has long, it's bins equal 20. Now if we see this bin, which means this width of those bars, is we just make them as 20. So we start 20 from 100, 120, 40, 60, 80 to 200, and so on and so forth. Of course, we can add them more. Usually in NFL, 10 yard is for one play, but sometimes it gets more. So we can just make it as pins equal to 10. So we just have to add 10 pins. Now, since we are having from 500, I think 20 or 30 should be a good number of pins to consider here. Now, what else we can add? We can add edge color equal black. Why do we need edge color? You can see that those bars get inside each other, especially here. You cannot see any difference. So what we will do is we will add edge color to be black, and now it's look much better. It's much cleaner up here. Now sometimes we can use range. Now range is a very important concept because range, you have to give me two numbers. You have to give me minimum and what is the x maximum you want me to show to you. You need those two numbers. Of course, if we keep it as this, we start from 100, this was the minimum, to something around 600. Now sometimes you only want to think about it from 250 to 400. So I will just go and ask the range from 250 yards to 400. That's what I want. That's the snap I want to get. And that's exactly what happened. We start at 250 to 400, and this is the histogram that we will get. Of course, this is kind of only snapping part of the big picture if we do it without the range. So let me comment this one, keep it for you. And now I just remove the range, add another type of parameters. What can we add? Well, we can add, instead of having histogram using bars, let's do it with hist type parameter. Now either you can do it a step, so we'll do it as a step. So the histogram will go only steps. It's not bars anymore, it's just steps. Or we can do it steps but also filled. So it's a step and I color whatever inside it. Of course, in the usual histogram type, the bar is the one that is by default. This is the bar. And that's the what we sometimes stick with. Now, sometimes in some applications, I just want it to be, for example, cumulative. So I want my histogram to be as cumulative. Let's look at this cumulative. So it means the histogram, like a density function, will just add up the previous one. So whatever in 300, I will just also count whatever before it, reaching to the end. In this type, the step will look much better. Look at the steps. It's much nicer here and here and here. Now, what else we can do other than this? Oh, we can change the orientation. Now the orientation, it's either horizontal or vertical. So I can change the orientation to horizontal. Of course, by default, it is vertical. We can change it into horizontal. Now, what else we can do? We can just do the same thing we just did here. Now, this time, I will remove the cumulative. I will just use density. Of course, let's keep the default orientation as vertical, step, black, bends. Let's see what will be the difference. Well, it looks like the previous one, except if you look at the left side, you will find the density. So you will find them as a percentage instead of the actual numbers. And that's mostly how we do and print the histogram reading from the file. We can just add all those parameters and even more and more. So we start with the first simple example. We add then later the red color, number of bands, the edge color, and sometimes the range. Of course, those are starting from here. Histotype, cumulative, orientation. This is of course specific to a certain data set. Sometimes we want it as a density, sometimes cumulative, and sometimes horizontal, and even the shape. But if we stick with the standard one, we will go with this combination. Now, let's have a little bit of a further exercise. And in this exercise, what we will do is, imagine I don't want to find the histogram for all the teams in all the weeks. So now, I want you to think how to specify certain team histogram only. For example, imagine we have a team called Chicago, CHI, and I want the histogram only for Chicago. I will advise you to pause this video for a second and try to think about it yourself and then play it and compare your answer. Okay. How would I do it? First of all, I need to find the yard, the passing yard of only the team that is Chicago. So what you need to do is something we usually call it filter. So you need to have a condition here instead of the filter that only give me the data of Chicago. And how we do that? We write something equal Chicago. Now, what will be something equal Chicago? It will be the column that I call it T, equal to Chicago. And let me just print data. Oh, look. Now it's print only the data related to Chicago from week 1 to week 18. Of course, in the NFL we have 18 weeks. Every team plays 17 games, but here we are just writing down. Look, for example, Chicago didn't play in week 14. So they play on 17 games in a regular season, and there is 1 week missing, which they call it bye week, where the team rests for that week. So we have 17 data here for the team Chicago. Now we have to do the same thing we just did before. I don't need this one, I'll just comment it, which means you need to plot. So plot.hist, and now you just need to add the data. Of course, what do I need to plot the histogram with? I need the yards of my data, not the F yard, my data, because my data now is specific to a certain team. Of course, we have to give it a color. For example, purple. Edge color, just in case we want to be clear. And let's give the bins a quantity which is 20. And of course, we can just play it, and that's what we get. That's the histogram for Chicago. Of course, this is not the best one because this is just, if you just count them, these are just for 17 weeks. It's not of that big of a data, and the frequency is not that much between them, but this is the histogram that we get. Now, let's say I want like to do the same thing. Now, specify the histogram for certain week. For example, I want to see what was the defense allowed yard in week number 9. Again, please pause this video, try it yourself, and come and compare the answer. Well, I'll just copy and paste this one. Why? Because the difference will be so that we don't even see it. First of all, I want to compare everything with week number 9. So here, instead of choosing the team, I'll just choose the week. Compare it with week number 9. Of course, before you plot, make sure that you get it correctly. So print the data. I bring the data, it's week number 9, and all the 32 teams in NFL comes here. Oh, of course, not all of them, because some of them, they have a bye week at week number 9. So I get most of them here, and each one, the yards allowed with it. Next step, you just go ahead and plot the histogram, and that will be the histogram for week number 9. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Thank you for watching.